So often, with politics, with education, it all comes down to character. What is the character of the person? Not really what are the policies. The policies matter enormously. And as the leadership race drags on, Kenneth Clarke has now come out in favour of Rishi Sunak, or rather against Liz Truss, which is how it should be. Also, Raab has come out in favour of Rishi Sunak, as has Michael Howard. Raab, of course, is somebody who I don't trust. I wouldn't trust him to boil an egg. But the more people who come out in favour of Rishi Sunak or against Liz Truss, the better, I suppose. It's all a bit late. It may not have that much effect. But there was a time when the Conservative Party used to listen to the grandees, and Mr. Clarke has said that Liz Truss's economics are simplistic and nonsense. Liz Truss, on the other hand, has said she won't give out handouts. That's Gordon Brown economics. Well, the alternative is to encourage inflation. Kenneth Clarke is quite clear that a recession is coming. It's just a matter of whether or not it's going to be accompanied by such inflation that people are going to suffer enormously, though inflation always brings with it social consequences. So are we going to see people unemployed and starved out of a house? Are we going to see people begging on the street? Because that is the forecast, I think, with Liz Truss's economic programme. And more than that, Liz Truss's economic programme is based on nonsense. It's based on a headroom that simply doesn't exist. There are people who would say that Liz Truss is ushering in the Labour Party, and therefore we should encourage Liz Truss, particularly those Labour Party supporters would say this. Labour has seen a surge in the last week, but I think the price is too great. Whether one supports Labour or one doesn't support Labour, the price is too great. We cannot see our country go to the dogs for 2 years because we have encouraged a twit to take the keys of number 10. And I don't know how to discourage people from this strange obsession. I think it is inevitable that Labour will win the next election. The only question now is who minds the ship in the meantime. And I think that should be Mr. Sunak. And should it be Liz Truss, how do we progress then? Because Liz Truss has bad policies. We know this. She's pursuing a fantasy project rather than reality. She's producing economics on a wing and a prayer. She changes her mind and then tells us we're not listening. That really is the issue because of the character trait. Now, Liz Truss is one of a number of people in politics at the moment who I think is dangerous. Because she doesn't listen, she doesn't take advice. And when she's told she's wrong, she turns around and tells us that we hadn't listened, that we didn't hear what she actually intended. It's always me, or her. And that is part of the problem that I've got at the moment. That I think there are 4 people, or there have been 4 people in the present Parliament who have done this consistently. And 3 of them are people I've been speaking about a lot in the last few weeks. One of them, Gavin Williamson, is long gone. Thank God. He brought the Education Ministry to its knees, and James Cleverly is going to have great difficulty making it recover. Can he? Well, he might, but he should start off by resigning. One of the things that one must do is bring a sense of honour back to politics if one's going to see anything improve. The other 3 individuals are, Liz Truss herself, Priti Patel, and Nadine Dorries. All of these stubbornly refuse to accept advice. They all refuse to accept a rebuke. And they all retort that we weren't listening. And all three of them have accused or have treated others with contempt. And one of them has actually been accused of bullying. Now, one could say, oh, but all three of these are women. Well, all three out of the four are. Does that make me a misogynist? Well, I don't think so. I think it simply makes me a realist. And how do I answer this charge? Because it is a charge, and I'm very much aware of it. We can go back to the height of the 1960s and Germaine Greer and all these splendid people pursuing sort of feminist drive. And if that has any value, then it's that we should treat everyone alike, irrespective of gender. And it would be wrong to omit criticism of these individuals simply because they are three women. We need to bite the bullet here. And as I'm saying that, I need also to rebuke James Cleverly again for being silent, for remaining silent today and not getting on the television to explain the BTEC exam result fiasco, and particularly because he says that he supports the poorer and the weaker students and at least allows for the possibility that universities should be that part of our education system that is committed to social reform. I don't agree, by the way. But whatever is the case, we must support the fresh green shoots of engineering and technology, and he, James Cleverly, is allowing this abuse of power, because that's what it is. When somebody doesn't mark your work, it's an abuse of power. He's allowing this abuse of power by Pearson to go without explanation or apology from the top. That is his job. If he can't do his job, he should tender his resignation. If he doesn't know who to tender his resignation to, then presumably he can do it to Mr. Raab. Mr. Raab is only too ready to give his opinion about the leadership candidates, so I'm sure he's on hand to accept Mr. Cleverly's resignation. That should be immediate, and again, irrespective of colour, race, gender. Now, if in the dreadful possibility Liz Truss were to become Prime Minister, how would we protect Liz Truss from her own character traits, from her own failings? Well, I'm not sure we can. And this is why. Because in the past there would have been somebody on hand, there would have been a group of people on hand to advise the Prime Minister, who would have known the Prime Minister's weaker character traits, and to make sure, there are gatekeepers and there are advisors who are going to be there on hand to bulk up the bits that the Prime Minister doesn't get right. And what we found during Boris's tenure is that doesn't happen. There was nobody. I think that role was taken over by Mr. Cummings, and I think Mr. Cummings has single-handedly destroyed that position, though I am prepared to concede that Mrs. May didn't seem to take very much advice either. So can that role be restored? Can we find somebody who is going to give advice to Liz Truss in the dreadful possibility that she becomes Prime Minister? We can only hope that's possible. We can only hope, because that is our only way out of this mess. And meanwhile, whether we want a Labour victory, whether we want a future Conservative victory, we actually want a country here in 2 years' time. And with somebody who pouts and sulks when she's told she's wrong, as we saw in front of Lavrov, the only way she comes across is belligerent. And with a world crisis in Ukraine threatening to get bigger and bigger, that is not a person that I would like to be leading our country. And if she is leading our country, I would like her to be well protected and insulated. Have fun.